Okay, so I am going to read another personal story from the 1939 first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. However, this is a little bit of a different slant. Later on, when 12 step recovery um, developed more after Alcoholics Anonymous, there was a program called Al Anon. That was for the spouse or the significant other of the alcoholic. But when AA was formed, there wasn't any Al Anon, at least that I'm not aware of. This story is from the wife's perspective. So, I mean, remember, this was written in the 30s. And so, this time in America, the assumption was that the man was a suffering alcoholic, the wife was the caretaker. And that's how it kind of went. And this story is written from the wife's perspective. But I'm going to include this story in this collection for this playlist because I think it's important to look at alcoholism from the significant other's perspective. But then what I'm going to also do is just do a little bit of commentary on this as well, which is different than what I've done before. Okay, so let's get started. This is called An Alcoholic's Wife by Marie Bray, Akron, Ohio. Everybody seems to be from Akron, Ohio. Okay, let's start. I have the misfortune, or I should say the good fortune, of being an alcoholic's wife. I say misfortune because of the worry and grief that goes with drinking, and good fortune because we found a new way of living. My husband did not drink, to my knowledge, for several years after we were married. Then we started on an occasional Saturday night party. As I drank nothing except an occasional highball, I soon became what was called a wet blanket. The parties became more frequent, and more often I was left at home. I would sit up and wait for him. As each car passed the house, I would return to walking the floor and crying and feeling so sorry for myself and thinking, here I am left at home to take care of the baby and him out having a good time. When he did return, sometimes on Sunday and sometimes a week later, it usually called for a scene. If he was still drunk, I would put him to bed and cry some more. If he was sober, it would mean I would say all the things I'd been thinking and cry some more. He usually got drunk again. I finally went to work as the bills worried me. I thought if I worked and got the bills paid, he'd quit drinking. He had no money in the bank, but would write checks as he knew I would pay them for the boys' sake and in the hopes that each time would be the last. I thought I should have a lot of credit as I was paying his bills, taking care of the house and baby, and besides my work, taking as much money as he was doing without things I wanted so he could have a good time. I always went to church and thought I was living a Christian life. After my husband came in contact with Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought our troubles were over, as I was sure all of our trouble was his drinking. I soon found out there was a lot wrong with me. I was selfish with my money, time, and thoughts. I was selfish about my time because I was always tired and had no time left for my family's pleasures or to do God's work. All I did was go to Sunday school and church on Sunday with the boy and thought that was all God wanted me to do. I'd be irritable, lose my temper, and say all manner of things, which usually called for another drunk and me pitying myself all over again. Since giving my husband's problems to God, I have found a peace and happiness. I know that when I try to take care of the problems of my husband, I'm a stumbling block as my husband has to take his problems to God, the same as I do. My husband and I now talk over our problems and trust in a divine power. We have now started to live. When we live with God, we want for nothing. So I've been married twice. Alcoholism played a major factor in both of those marriages. I know this, that when this writer here states, she makes this comment that my husband and I now took over our problems and trust in divine power. We have now started to live. When we live with God, we want for nothing. And then she says this comment, which is very, very profound. I know that when I try to take care of the problems of my husband, I am a stumbling block, as my husband has to take his problems to God the same as I do. That's a major lesson. And I would just say this. Any of the caretakers out there that feel frustrated, I'll just use the Al-Anon term, with your alcoholic. That's what they say in Al-Anon sometimes. You are not the caretaker. You may physically be the caretaker, but you're not the caretaker. God's still the caretaker. And if you take on the role of that caretaker, it's going to build up resentment and frustration inside of you. The alcoholic is dealing with his own recovery. Post and during drinking and post drinking, he's still dealing with his recovery. And he has to deal with God. You have a horizontal relationship with him, and he has a vertical relationship with God, and you have a vertical relationship with God. The vertical relationships are what are going to save you and give you the quality recovery. The horizontal relationships are important because they're practical. You got to live with this person, get along, hopefully make a life together. But focus on the vertical relationship. You focus on yours, they focus on theirs. And prayer, honesty, humility, kindness, love. Practice all of those principles. But remember, the primary relationship is the relationship you have with your higher power, that you have with God. And God is the same God. Your God and the alcoholic's God are the same God. So as long as you're working with your relationship, God's going to work with them. But if you try to work with them on a human level, the expectations, the biases, you see, this writer here, look at what she said. I thought I should have a lot of credit. I was paying his bills, taking care of the house and baby, besides my work, making as much money as he was doing without things I wanted so he could have a good time. You see the resentment in there? The expectation is for this wife, in this case, was that I'm doing these things, he needs to do something back. But he's dealing with his recovery and working his relationship with God. By this wife doing these things, she should be doing them for God, not for the alcoholic. And then God will give you the reward back internally. And she makes another comment here. I soon found out there was a lot of wrong with me. I was selfish with my money, time, and thoughts. I was selfish about my time because I was always tired and had no time left for my family's pleasures or to do God's work. All I did was go to Sunday school and church on Sunday with the boy and thought that was all God wanted me to do. I would be irritable and lose my temper and say all manner of things, which usually called for another drunk. That's his drunk, not her drunk. I think that's what that means. And me pitying myself all over again. So, you don't do things just take your problems to God. Take your problems to God. These qualities here, the selfishness. She mentions that twice. I was selfish with my money, with my thoughts, selfish about my time. So there's three things she was selfish about. Selfishness. That's something that has to be dealt with God. Moral of the story is, for the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, I'll say caretaker, is to focus on the vertical relationship with God and how God can work in your heart. The other person's there as an interactive piece in your life, as an interactive piece on the chessboard, so to speak. Maybe chessboard's not a great way to say it because that sounds like there's competition. It's just another piece of life. But the relationships between you and God. Anyhow, that's all I have to say about that. Join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and forever. Amen.